Let my people go!
The slaves are mine.
Somewhere under the sand dunes of the California coast, there is an Egyptian city with 21 sphinxes in it. It was built for this film, or rather, for the version of this film that came first. Most of it is still down there. These are 19 things about the 10 Commandments that most people watching it have never been told. Number 1. He made this film twice. Cecil B. DeMille told this story on screen twice, 33 years apart. The 1956 version most people know is a remake of the prologue of his own silent film from 1923. Same director, same story, two entirely different productions, separated by more than 3 decades and by the arrival of sound, color, and widescreen. He announced the remake in 1952. It became his last film. He died 3 years after it opened. And the earlier version is not just a footnote here. Something DeMille built for it in 1923 is still in the ground today, and archaeologists were digging it up as recently as a few years ago. We will come back to that. Number 2, they carried the cameras up Mount Sinai. In September of 1954, DeMille took a special unit to Egypt for 3 months of location work with 4 heavy VistaVision cameras. They went first to the slopes of Mount Sinai. The camels carrying the equipment could only get about halfway up the mountain. Past that point, the gear was broken down into pieces and carried the rest of the way by the crew, on foot. DeMille was 73 when that expedition set out. He turned 75 during the production, which made him the oldest working director in Hollywood at the time. Number 3, the film flew to Hollywood 4 times a week. There was no way to see what you had shot, so they built a supply line. Each day's exposed film was trucked 10 hours to Cairo. The truck then turned around and drove back uphill, a journey reported at around 15 hours to collect the next day's material. The cans were packed in dry ice, flown from Cairo to Hollywood, processed there, and flown back to Egypt 4 times a week so DeMille could look at them. Every frame you see from that location was reviewed by a man on another continent, several days after it was shot. Number 4, Paramount had to build more cameras. So many scenes needed several cameras rolling at once that Paramount commissioned the Mitchell Camera Corporation to build additional VistaVision units specifically for this production. Out in the desert, the heat and the dust storms meant those cameras had to be stripped down, cleaned, and readjusted by a specialist maintenance crew reportedly every night. There is an odd afterlife to this. Decades later, those same VistaVision cameras were sought after by visual effects companies because they could produce a large area negative on ordinary 35mm stock. Equipment built for a biblical epic in the 1950s ended up shooting effects work for a later generation of films. Number 5. Nobody agrees on how many extras there were. You will see a lot of numbers attached to this film, and they do not match. Some accounts put the crowd work at around 14,000 extras and 15,000 animals. Contemporary trade reporting, working from the producer's own count, gives 2,300 technicians and 25,000 extras. That is a difference of 11,000 people. We are not going to pick one and read it out as though it were settled. What is agreed is that the crowd scenes were assembled from real human beings and real animals in real locations with no way to duplicate a figure in post-production, and that the production occupied nearly every stage on the Paramount lot when it came home. Number 6. How they parted the Red Sea. The effect that won this film, its only Academy Award, took roughly 6 months to assemble. At Paramount, they built large dump tanks in a U-shaped trough holding a reported 360,000 gallons of water. Gelatin was added to thicken it, so that on camera it would move with the weight and consistency of seawater rather than tap water. Rounded planks were placed to break the flow and produce the churned, stormy seabed you see. 4 high-speed VistaVision cameras filmed the water being released from platforms around the setup. Then the footage was run in reverse, so that water crashing down became water surging upward into walls. A second unit shot 6 separate water sequences, and the whole thing was composited together with matte paintings, hand-painted landscapes, and location material from Egypt. Number 7. The cheapest shot in the film. And then there is what DeMille did when the sea had to close again and drown the Egyptian army. He did not build a second effect. He ran the parting footage backwards. The water that had been filmed falling, then reversed to rise, was simply reversed once more to fall, cut together with reaction shots of the actors. The most expensive sequence in the picture pays for itself twice. You can see it if you look. The collapse is the rise, played the other way round. Number 8. The tablets are real Sinai stone. The stone tablets Moses carries down the mountain were not studio plaster. They were cut from rock quarried at Mount Sinai itself, and they measure about 21 inches by 11 by 1. The lettering on them was carved under the supervision of Dr. Ralph Marcus, professor of Oriental Studies at the University of Chicago, in the Phoenician alphabet, a script contemporary with the period of the story, which uses no vowels. So the writing on those tablets is not decorative squiggle. It is a real ancient script, checked by an academic, cut into real Sinai rock. DeMille worked the same way on the look of the film generally. He laid out prints of paintings by Lawrence Alma Tadema for his set designers, to show them the world he wanted built. Number 9. Heston got the part on a resemblance. Charlton Heston had already worked for DeMille once, but the reason he became Moses is partly a matter of a face. DeMille himself tells the story in the film's original theatrical trailer. Heston bore an uncanny resemblance to Michelangelo's statue of Moses in Rome. That trailer still exists, and DeMille says it in his own voice, which is worth noting because a lot of casting anecdotes from this era survive only as second-hand retellings. This one does not. Heston also impressed DeMille at his audition with what he knew about ancient Egypt. Number 10. The baby is Heston's own son. The infant Moses set adrift on the Nile is Fraser Heston, Charlton Heston's newborn son. When Heston told DeMille that his wife Lydia was expecting, DeMille cast the child on the spot before it was born. Fraser was around 3 months old when he was filmed. So in the sequence where the basket goes into the reeds, the father playing Moses as an adult is a few feet away, and the baby in the basket is his son. Number 11. Brynner trained because of Heston. Yul Brynner learned 2 things when he was cast as Ramesses: that he would be playing opposite Charlton Heston, and that he would spend most of the film with no shirt on. He responded by starting a serious weightlifting program, because he did not want to be physically overshadowed. There is a way to check the result for yourself. Brynner went back to Broadway in The King and I immediately afterwards, and the physique he built for this film is visible there. Heston, for what it is worth, later said that Brynner gave the best performance in the picture. Number 12. Audrey Hepburn was nearly Nefertiti. The role of Nefertiti went to Anne Baxter, but she was not the first name in the room. Vivien Leigh, Jane Russell, and Audrey Hepburn were all considered, and by several accounts, DeMille came close to casting Hepburn. The reported reason he did not is that he judged her the wrong shape for the costumes the part required. That reasoning is repeated in a lot of places, and it is worth flagging what it is: a claim about a private casting decision made decades ago that we cannot verify from a primary document. We are including it because it is consistently reported, not because it is proven. Number 13. The blacklisted actor DeMille hired anyway. Edward G. Robinson plays Dathan, the overseer. By the mid-1950s, Robinson's career had been badly damaged by the Hollywood blacklist and the political suspicion attached to him. DeMille was a conservative, and their politics were not close. He cast Robinson anyway. Accounts of why differ. The version most often repeated is that DeMille believed an injustice had been done to him. What is not in dispute is the timing. Robinson needed a major picture, and this was the one he got. It is a strange thing to notice while watching a film about deliverance from bondage, and it happens in the background of every scene he is in. Number 14. Nobody knows whose voice God is. Here is the one that has never been settled. The voice of God is not credited anywhere in the film. Over the years, it has been claimed for, or attributed to, at least 4 people. DeMille himself, who also narrates the picture; Charlton Heston, the bass singer Delos Jukes, whose obituary named him; and Donald Hayne, DeMille's publicist and biographer, who said that Heston voiced the burning bush while he, Hayne, voiced the giving of the commandment. Heston said in his own autobiography, and again on a DVD released decades later, that it was him. He may be right about the bush. Listeners who have raised the pitch of the burning bush recording report that it sounds unmistakably like Heston and that the voice on Mount Sinai does not. That is a listening exercise, not a document, and the film's own credits still say nothing. This is genuinely unresolved, and anyone who tells you flatly whose voice it is telling you more than the evidence supports. Number 15, the heart attack he took 2 days off for. During the Exodus sequence, a camera mounted on one of the giant gates stopped working properly. DeMille, 75 years old, climbed roughly 130 feet up the gate to look at it himself. The effort brought on a heart attack. He took 2 days off and went back to work against his doctor's advice and finished the film. He never directed another. He died in 1959, 3 years after it opened. Number 16. It won 1 Oscar, not 7. This film received 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. It won 1 Best Special Effects for The Parting of the Red Sea. You will find articles, including some published quite recently by large outlets, that state it won 7 Academy Awards. It did not. 7 is the nomination count. 1 is the win. The distinction matters because the single award it did take is for exactly the sequence we walked through earlier, which means the 6 months in the dump tanks is the only part of this production the Academy actually rewarded. Number 17. What it actually earned. The budget is generally given as around $13 million, which made it one of the most expensive films made up to that point. It took roughly $122.7 million on its initial release, and it was the highest-grossing film of 1956. Adjusted for inflation, it is routinely listed among the highest-earning films ever made, but the adjusted figures vary wildly depending on method, with published estimates ranging from around $1.1 billion to nearly $3 billion. That spread is not a small rounding difference. It is why we are giving you the original numbers, which are documented, rather than an adjusted one, which is an estimate dressed as a fact. Number 18. The television tradition and the years it did not air. The film's second life began on television. It made its broadcast debut on ABC on the 18th of February, 1973, and drew a reported 24 million viewers. It has been shown around Easter and Passover most years since, for more than half a century, and for many families in the United States, it is a fixture of the calendar rather than a film. But the thing everyone says about it, that it has aired every year since 1973, is not quite right. Broadcast records show gaps. 1999 is the one usually mentioned, but archives list several other years with no airing at all. Most years, yes. Every year, no. Number 19. The City Under the Sand, and the story DeMille told about it, back to 1923. For the silent version, DeMille built an Egyptian city in the Guadalupe-Nipomo dunes on the coast of California. 21 enormous plaster sphinxes lined the approach to it, alongside a temple front reported at 800 feet wide. Around 3,500 people worked out there in a temporary town in the sand. When shooting finished, the set never came home. DeMille's own account was dramatic. He said he had it dynamited and bulldozed into a trench so that no rival director could film on his Egypt for free. That story went around for 60 years. In 1983, a filmmaker named Peter Brosnan tracked the site down, working partly from a clue in DeMille's published autobiography, and found plaster poking out of a dune. Excavations followed in 2012, 2014, and 2017. An archaeologist brought up sphinxes with the original paint still on them. And in one case, the fingerprints of the artists who made them in 1923. And here is the part that matters. The evidence does not support the dynamite. There is no blast damage and no scatter pattern of the kind an explosion leaves. What historians working the site now believe is far more ordinary. The set was broken down, abandoned, and gradually covered by shifting sand. Locals carted sphinxes away through the 1920s and used them as garden ornaments and target practice. Most of the city is still out there, under the dunes, protected in part by a threatened bird, the western snowy plover that nests on the surface above it. So, the most famous buried film set story in Hollywood turns out to have been a better story than the truth. and the man who made it up was the director. If you grew up watching this every spring, which part stayed with you? Leave it below. And if you want more of what got left out of the films you already know, subscribe.